With the college basketball regular season officially coming to a close, I wanted to talk about the March Madness bubble picture and where teams currently stand. So in today's video, I'm going to be tier ranking every team on the bubble and where they currently are at and what they need to do to get into the NCAA tournament. But before we get into it, if you enjoy the content, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as I'll have more March Madness content coming out here soon. But now, let's jump into it. All right, so we have 5 different tiers that we're going to be putting these bubble teams into based on where they're currently at or what they need to do to get into the NCAA tournament. And they are should be in, probably in, on the bubble, in danger, and must win tournament. So should be in, these are going to be the bubble teams that I would feel best about taking in the field if it was selection Sunday. Then we got teams that are probably in, and these are teams that are most likely going to hear their name on selection Sunday, but there is some vulnerability with them. Then we have on the bubble, so these are teams that are truly 50-50 right now. Think of the teams that are last 4 in or first 4 out. Then we have teams that are in danger, so these teams still definitely have a path to get in, but I would currently leave them out, and it's going to be tough for them. And then we have teams that are in that must-win tournament, and I think at this point, with what their resume is, they're going to have to win their conference tournament in order to get into the field. All right, so starting off our list, we have the Auburn Tigers, who of course might be one of the most controversial bubble teams right now, and that's because this is a team that has an overall record of 16-15 currently. The Tigers are 8-14 in quad 1 and quad 2, and for them, the positives are they play in the SEC, so they've had a very difficult schedule, and they have avoided bad losses outside of quad 1 so far. But the biggest issue, obviously, is that overall record, because they're almost 500 on the season, and the committee historically avoids teams with 15 or more losses to get into the field with an at-large bid. And if Auburn doesn't win their tournament, they're going to be a 16-loss team, which has never made the field as an at-large. So I'm putting Auburn in the must-win tournament tier because I think with that amount of losses, this team is going to have to win the SEC in order to get in. Then we have Boise State, which is here as well, and they've kind of crept into the bubble picture recently. They are 8-9 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, sit at 20-11 overall out of the Mountain West. Their net ranking is 56, and their resume average is around 56 as well. And the Broncos, they have a solid number of quality wins in Mountain West play, and they also got a quad 1 win over St. Mary's earlier in the season. And for the most part, they've handled business against the weaker teams on their schedule. We all know they had that loss to Hawaii Pacific the first game of the season, but fortunately for them, it doesn't count when it looks at their overall resume for the NCAA tournament because it's a non-D1 team. If it did count, they would definitely be out of the tournament picture for me. But because it doesn't count, they are here. Overall, though, the metrics aren't necessarily great when evaluating them compared to other tournament teams, so I do think they're going to have to win the Mountain West tournament in order to get in. Next, we have Cal, which Cal was in the field recently, but has been slipping as of late. They come in with a net ranking of 65th, and their resume metrics average is around 51 or 52. They're 6-9 in quad 1 and quad 2. With a 21-10 overall record out of the ACC. And for me, the record itself looks pretty solid for the Golden Bears, and they have avoided bad losses. But the predictive metrics are what is really holding this team down because they are extremely weak. KenPom has them around 70th. Torvik has them around 64th, which is way lower than any other bubble team really around here. And so with those advanced metrics being that low, I think the committee's going to have a difficult time giving them an at-large bid. But if they do go on a run in the ACC tournament, I think they can get in without getting the win. So I'm just going to put them in this in danger field for now. Then we have Cincinnati as our next tier, and this is a team out of the Big 12 that started off really slow. They were basically nowhere to be talked about when we really started getting into the bubble picture and bracketology, but as of late, they've gone 6-2 in their last 8 games in the Big 12. They're now 17-14 overall, 8-13 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, and they have a good net ranking of 47th, but the resume metrics are lacking down in the 60s, and their predictive metrics are really what are keeping them in the conversation right now, as it's an average of 38th across the board with those. So I think with their record right now and with their predictive metrics, they're still on the outside, but they're definitely in the conversation. So I do think if they go on a run in the Big 12 tournament, they can get in, but I would definitely make sure you win 2, 3, maybe even 4 games to get in, but I am going to be putting them in the in danger section because I do think they can get in without winning the Big 12, but they're going to have to at least get some wins in that one. Then we have Indiana, and this is probably our first team that I'm going to be putting in the on the bubble, the true bubble. They're basically 50-50 for me, whether they're in or out. Indiana right now is actually just one spot higher in KenPom than Cincinnati, but their net ranking and resume metrics are 10 spots higher, which put them above the Bearcats for me. They're 6-13 in quad 1 and quad 2, have an overall record of 18-13 in the Big Ten, and the predictive metrics for Indiana are actually pretty strong, and they've avoided some bad losses as well. But the major issue for me with the Hoosiers is their lack of high-end wins, because they got basically nothing in the non-conference, and then just have home wins over Purdue and Wisconsin that are the most notable for them. And I still have them as my last four in my bracketology right now, but they're on that cut line. I could see them going anyway, so they're definitely on the bubble. Then we have Iowa, and most people might be asking, why do I have Iowa in here? They've slowly been slipping recently and kind of gotten to that like 9 or 10 seed range in most bracketology. They're 2-6 in their last 8 games, so the Hawkeyes definitely have been struggling as of late. But I do think with what they've done earlier in the season, they're 9-9 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. They have an overall record of 20-11, and then that net ranking of 25th, and their resume metrics around 40. I think they should be in regardless of what they do in the Big Ten tournament, so I'm putting them in the should be in category. But if you're the Hawkeyes, I would suggest winning at least 1, maybe 2 games to be 100% sure. But for me, I think even with a loss, they should be in. Now we got Miami, Ohio, which is another team that is extremely controversial on the bubble. We all know Miami, Ohio just finished their season perfect, 31-0 out of the MAC, and they definitely have one of the most unique resumes in the country. But for them, only 28 of those games actually count, because 3 of them were against non-D1 schools. But they also haven't played a single quad 1 game, and their predictive metrics are extremely low because of this. They're sitting around 90th in that range for the predictives. But even without a quad 1 game and only 1 quad 2 win on the resume, this team should still be in my opinion. And I don't think it matters what happens in the MAC tournament, because if you can go 31-0 in the regular season, undefeated throughout, and then you take 1 loss in the tournament, I just feel like there's no way we can leave a 1-loss team, regardless of the conference that you're in, out of the NCAA tournament. I think that would set a horrible precedent. And so I have Miami, Ohio as should be in, regardless of what happens in the MAC tournament. Then we have Missouri, and Missouri is another team that I'm actually going to be putting on the bubble. A few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, I would have had them in my probably in tier, but right now Missouri, they're kind of going back a little bit. They're 43rd in their resume metrics average, 20-11 overall out of the SEC. They do have double-digit quad 1 and quad 2 wins combined with 10, going 10-11 there, and they've picked up 5 quad 1 wins overall, and that is actually one of the stronger high-end win totals of anyone on the bubble. So right now, I do have Missouri in my last 4 in, but the issue definitely is going to be their inconsistency, because they have great wins on the resume like Florida, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee out of the SEC, but also some really disappointing losses like Notre Dame and Ole Miss. And with losing their last 2 games in conference play, it puts them on the bubble for me. As I mentioned previously, they would have been probably in tier for me, but I still lean like they are in right now. But I think they should definitely win a game or 2 in the SEC just to be certain, so I have them on the bubble. Then we have NC State, and the Wolfpack and Will Wade, once ranked in the AP Top 25, now in the bubble conversations. Kind of crazy how this season has turned for them. They're 1-6 in their last 7 games, which brought them closer and closer to the bubble each and every week. But they do have strong metrics. Net ranking of 35th, resume metrics in the high 30s as well. 11-11 in quad 1 and quad 2 games combined, with a 19-12 overall record. And the biggest strength on their resume is the volume of quality wins that they have, because very few bubble teams have double-digit quad 1 and quad 2 victories like the Wolfpack. I just mentioned Missouri does, but they have one more than the Tigers. So I'm putting NC State in my probably in tier. I think they're going to be in regardless of what happens in the ACC tournament, but just like most of these teams, win a game or 2 and you're for sure dancing. Now we got New Mexico. New Mexico is another team out of the Mountain West, and this one is going to be a little iffy. They're 8-7 in quad 1 and quad 2 games and 21-9 overall. They have a net ranking of 45th, which is good, but the resume metrics are around 52nd, and they have a strong overall record and have avoided bad losses, but the biggest issue is they have lost 3 of their last 4. I previously had them in the tournament, but now I actually have them in my first 4 out conversation, and without a signature victory on the resume, to me, it feels a bit incomplete, so I would like to see them go on a bit of a run in the Mountain West tournament, so I'm having them as on the bubble. Then we have Ohio State, and Ohio State was on the outside looking in for the majority of the season, but in the last week or so, the Buckeyes have played themselves well into the field to me and should probably be in, especially after that big win at home against Purdue. So I'm having the Buckeyes in the probably in tier. They're 9-11 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, 20-11 overall. They currently have a net ranking of 30th and resume metrics of 37th, which are definitely on the higher end than most of these bubble teams. And they also rank well in the predictive metrics as they're 26th in KenPom. And so with all these strong metrics in their analytical profile, I think it's going to be difficult to have this Big Ten team out of the tournament. So I'm going to have them in my probably in tier, and they should stay inside the field. Then we have Oklahoma, another team out of the SEC that's kind of gotten into the conversation from the bubble as of late. They were nowhere near this conversation until the last few weeks and have now won 4 in a row to end their conference regular season schedule and to get into this conversation. They're 17-14 overall, 9-14 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, so no losses outside quad 1 and quad 2. And still, while they have played a difficult schedule in the SEC, their overall metrics simply lack and are a bit too weak compared to others. Their resume metrics are around 59th. They have a KPI ranking around 70th and have a few losses that I wish they wouldn't have taken. So I have them currently sitting outside of the tournament, and it feels like right now with their record and where they're at, they're probably going to have to win the SEC. Maybe they could get to the SEC championship game and lose, but I think right now with where they're at, I'm putting them as must-win tournament to get in, especially if there are some bid thieves out there. Then we have St. Louis, and St. Louis is another team that was nowhere near being in this video until the end of February to now, because they have went 3-3 in their last 6 games in the A10, which has dropped them in a lot of different metrics. But still, when you're looking at those metrics, they have one of the strongest resumes in the country. The net ranking is the 27th. The resume metrics average out around 34th. The Pelicans are 6-3 in quad 1 and quad 2 and sit at 27-4 overall, so just 1 loss outside of the first 2 quadrants. For the most part, they've avoided bad losses besides that road loss at Rhode Island that they recently suffered. And again, until recently, they dominated most of their schedule. So I do think St. Louis should be in regardless of what happens in the A10 tournament. So I'm going to put them in that tier. Then we have San Diego State. San Diego State, I believe this team is in danger for a couple of different reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in that tier, but I'll explain. Their resume metrics are around 53, and they have an overall record of 19-10. They are 7-9 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. And the Aztecs, although they have that solid record and continue to rate well from a predictive metrics defensively, their biggest issue is that they've taken losses to other bubble teams like Utah State and New Mexico, and I think both of those teams have a better overall resume than the Aztecs, so we're going to have to see those teams get into the field with San Diego State getting in behind them. I think best case scenario, this team could get to the Mountain West Championship and then get in as a last 4 in type of team, but if I was the Aztecs, I would definitely suggest winning your conference just to be sure. Then Santa Clara, this is another team that I'm truly hoping gets into the field. Right now I have them squarely on the bubble, 50-50, whether or not they're in out of the WCC. And at the time of recording this, Santa Clara is in the WCC quarterfinal, so definitely suggest winning that one so you can get to the semifinal matchup against St. Mary's, I believe. But Santa Clara has really good resume metrics. They're 41st in the country there. Overall record of 24-7, 7-6 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, with a big win against St. Mary's early in the year. That is their lone quad 1 win. And This just keeps them barely inside the field. I have them as one of my last 4 teams, but I would suggest, as I mentioned, make it to the finals to be safe, get another win over St. Mary's, and that will likely keep you in the field as long as we don't have a ton of bid thieves. Jumping to our next bubble team, it's the Seton Hall Pirates out of the Big East, and Seton Hall was once close to the AP Top 25. I actually think they got into it. Also, this team was rolling in the Big East, but they have dropped recently. Their resume metrics are currently around 56. Their overall record is 20-11 on the season, which is a lot better than we thought Seton Hall would do. If we talked about this earlier in the year, I wouldn't even have had Seton Hall anywhere near the bubble. So Shaheen Holloway has done a great with that program this season. But while their overall record is solid, the biggest issue for me is that lack of a marquee win. They almost were able to get it against UConn a week or two ago, but weren't able to pull it off. And the fact that the Big East wasn't the best this year didn't help their case at all. Right now, they only have one quad one victory. And again, that resume lacks that kind of signature win. So I'm going to be putting them on the must-win tournament list. I think they're going to have to go in and win the Big East tournament, knock off a St. John's or UConn to get there. Then we have SMU, and SMU right now, I have them as probably in. I feel like they're going to get in. They have a net ranking of 38th, the resume metrics around 44th, and they're 8-12 in quad 1 and quad 2 games and sit at 19-12 overall. And they have played a difficult schedule and have been competitive in most of those games, but they don't have a ton of elite wins, and most of them came at home. And we know the committee likes to value road wins or neutral site wins because that's what's going to be happening in the tournament. So I think that's one thing that's lacking for SMU. But overall, this team has been pretty solidly on the right side of the bubble for the majority of the season. I think they're going to stay there, so I'm keeping them in that probably in category. Then we have another team in South Florida. This is the team that is the favorite to win the American Conference Tournament, but if they don't, I actually think they could be in the bubble conversation, and they deserve to be here, so I wanted to include them in this video. The Bulls have a resume metrics average of 50th and an overall record of 23-8 out of the American, 7-5 in quads 1 and quad 2 combined, and they have a strong win over Utah State on the resume. So if USF and Utah State are side by side, I think the committee would value that head-to-head. The biggest issue for the Bulls is they have 3 quad 3 losses that could hurt them. And then with their strength of schedule and the predictive metrics, they are a bit weaker than some of the other bubble teams. So right now, I would have them in my first 4 out, but that puts them squarely on the bubble. And I think if they can go on a run, make it to the American Championship game, and if they lose, I still think they have a shot at getting in. Then we have Stanford, who has played their way into the bubble recently out of the ACC as well. They have resume metrics around 47th and an overall record of 20-11, 9-8 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. So one of the few teams that we have that's actually positive in quad 1 and quad 2 games. And the Cardinals, they've picked up a solid number of quality wins and have played a competitive schedule, but the predictive metrics for this team are weaker than a lot of other teams, and that's going to be what is holding them back a bit. I have them in my first 4 out, so I'm putting them on the bubble right now. So I think they're squarely there, but they're going to have to make some noise in the ACC to make sure and get into the tournament. Then we have TCU. TCU has probably the best high major resume on the bubble when it comes to the wins that they have on their resume, because they have Florida, Wisconsin, Iowa State, and Texas Tech all as wins right now. Their resume metrics are around 34th, which is definitely one of the best for the bubble, and the overall record is 21-10 out of a really good conference in the Big 12. The Horned Frogs are 11-8 in quad 1 and quad 2 combined, and that is one of the strongest quality win totals among all bubble teams. And because of that resume strength and the signature wins that they have, especially on neutral site against Florida and Wisconsin, I think they should probably be in. I still think winning a game or two in the Big 12 and you're for sure in, but I think the Horned Frogs are going to make it. Then we have Texas, and last week I would have had Texas as probably in, but they did struggle a bit to end the year. They currently have resume metrics of 48 and an overall record of 18-13 out of the SEC, 8-12 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, so plenty of opportunities. And the Longhorns, they have strong predictive metrics and have played a difficult schedule out of the SEC, which I think really keeps them on the bubble. I have them on the right side right now, but the lack of high-end wins combined with an overall record puts them in a dangerous position. So I think they're going to be on the bubble, but if they win a game or two, I think they're squarely into the NCAA tournament. Then we have UCF. UCF is another team right now that I think is probably going to make it. They definitely were a bit higher, but it has slowed down a little bit. Their resume metrics are 35th and an overall record of 20-10 out of the Big 12. They're 10-9 in Quad 1 and Quad 2 games and have 5 Quad 1 wins total, including a win over Kansas and Texas Tech. So they have some of the better wins out of a lot of teams in the bubble when it comes to high-end resume boosters. And this is one of the best high-end win totals, similar to TCU with their 10 Quad 1 and Quad 2 wins. And because of the strong quality win profile from the Golden Knights, I think UCF should be comfortably in the tournament, so I'm putting them there in the probably in section. Then we have Texas A&M. They're another team that I have in the probably in section. They have resume metrics around 40th in an overall record of 21-10. I think they're slightly ahead of Texas as well, which is why I gave them the nod to move to the probably in section over the Longhorns. And the Aggies' resume overall is pretty balanced, and they've had some solid wins in conference play. And while they don't have a ton of elite wins like Quad 1A wins, the overall profile I think is still solid enough, and they should be in the field come Selection Sunday. Then we have UCLA. UCLA should be in the tournament with what they've done recently. They started off extremely slow on the season and in Big Ten play, but they've turned it around. Resume metrics are in the low 30s. They're 21-10 and have been playing better as of late. 10-10 in Quad 1 and Quad 2 games combined, and they have excellent predictive metrics across the likes of Kim Pom and Torvik right now. And I think the combination of the resume strength and the predictive metrics have them solidly in. They could be like a 9, maybe 10 seed. So I have the Bruins as a should be in. Another team that should be into the tournament for me is Utah State. They might actually have the best resume on the entire bubble to me, and they're still the favorite to win the Mountain West tournament, but if they don't, I think they're still in the NCAA tournament as an at-large bid. Their resume metrics average out around 31st, and their overall record is 25-6, which is one of the best records that we're going to talk about here on the bubble. The Aggies are 11-5 in Quad 1 and Quad 2 games. They have strong wins, an excellent record, and really only one loss outside the first 2 quadrants that could hurt them. And because of this complete resume, I think Utah State should feel extremely safe regardless of what happens in the Mountain West tournament. Then we have VCU. VCU is another team that I think is truly on the bubble right now. They're 24-7 out of the A10, but obviously when you're in the A10, you're not going to have as many quality games like some of these other conferences. So they're 5-7 in Quad 1 and Quad 2 games, but they have dominated lower competition, no losses outside the first 2 quadrants, and have one of the better overall records with it being 24-7 on the bubble. The lack of high-end wins is going to be something that's going to get them when it comes to the selection committee, but if they can beat the likes of a St. Louis in the tournament, I think VCU will be on the right side, but right now they sit right on that cut line. Then we have Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been moving in the right direction, but I still think they're in danger. There is potential for them to get far in the ACC tournament and make it into the NCAA tournament, so I don't think they necessarily have to win it, but I do think they have to string together some wins. Their resume metrics are around 47th. They're 19-12 overall, 8-12 in the first 2 quadrants, so no losses out of the first 2 quadrants, which is always good not to have any bad losses. They played a competitive ACC schedule and have definitely picked up some solid wins like Virginia, but the predictive metrics and that overall resume strength keeps them out of that last 4 in, first 4 out conversation for me, so I do have them in danger, but I think they still can play their way in. And then the last team I want to talk about is West Virginia out of the Big 12, and I think West Virginia, they're in between the in danger and must-win tournament tiers for me. They have resume metrics average of 66th, overall record of 18-13 out of the Big 12, 8-12 in the first 2 quadrants, including 5 of those 8 wins being Quad 1 wins. They do have 1 loss outside the first 2 quadrants. And the Mountaineers have shown that they can beat against high-level of teams, which is something that the committee looks at. But the overall resume metrics and the net ranking of 58 place them outside the typical at-large range right now. I'm putting them in the end danger because they're going to have a lot of opportunities in the Big 12 tournament if they win to get really good resume-boosting wins. So I think they can make it to the championship game and lose and still get into the tournament. but they're definitely going to have to make it far, so West Virginia lands in that in danger tier. But that wraps it up for today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on my tier ranking for the bubble teams. Let me know who you would have in a higher tier or lower tier. Also, if you enjoyed the content, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, and I'll have a ton more March Madness content on the way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.